Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Cheryl Huber. I'm Assistant Director for Food Access and Agriculture at GrowNYC. And tonight we are presenting our in-depth training on farm stands and how to run a farm stand. Obviously, take and leave what works for your situation and your organization. These are just some best practices that we've developed over the years that we want to share tonight. And I'm going to share my screen. Our presenters tonight are Michelle Hernandez from GrowNYC Wholesale and Corey Petrovic, who is the Farm Stand Program Coordinator. So let's see. Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep. Yes.
Great. Thanks. So I'll go ahead. As I said, this is sort of the farm stand in-depth training. We're doing our food box training on Friday, this Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. And that invitation has also gone out, but if you're interested in signing up, we can get you signed up for that training as well. So today's agenda, we're going to go through the operations of a farm stand, including things like pricing, staffing, and equipment. And then Michelle is going to take over and talk about the wholesale side of things in terms of how to order through GrowNYC Wholesale if you need to figure out a source of produce for your farm stand. And then we're going to go through accounting and how we track sales and report on sales from the farm stand. And then finally, a bit on COVID safety and the protocols that we've put in place since the pandemic. What you need to know to run a farm stand. All right, Corey, you're up.
Okay. Thank you, Cheryl. So hi, everybody. My name is Corey. I run the Farm Stand program. I've been running the program quite some time now. I think almost over 8 years now. So we're going to share some of the best practices that work for our farm stands. And once you start running your own, you can sort of take these as your guide and either implement the same things or change them and tweak them towards your own needs. So we'll start with the operations. It takes about just a quick step back. So farm stands, as some of you know, are in the free market. We operate on public streets of New York City. Farm stands.
Corey, we might need you to try to move again. You're cutting out a lot.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes.
Are you holding the microphone up to your mouth too? That might help.
Yeah. So the farmers bring produce to distribution stands.
I think we might need to switch speakers.
Yeah,
we're having a really hard time hearing you, Corey.
I'll try moving. Sorry, guys.
I can do this slide and we can try you again in a second. Okay. Corey was just explaining, how our farm stands operate. Typically they're once a week, and the produce we source from GrowNYC Wholesale. GrowNYC Wholesale aggregates products from farms in the region, in the warehouse in the Bronx, and then they're able to deliver that produce to the farm stand site. And typically we just operate our farm stands once a week at a particular location. About 8 to 10 hours are spent on site for the workers at that farm stand. And then in addition to that, there's about 5 to 7 hours spent on admin work. So really preparing for the market, placing the order, doing the bookkeeping for the site. We're really setting up on the streets of New York City on the sidewalks and any plazas, you know, anywhere we can carve out a little section of land that is conducive to having a farm stand. You want to make sure that there's decent foot traffic to ensure that you're going to have enough customers and enough interest in the farm stand. Typically for our GrowNYC farm stands, we have one farm stand manager who does that admin portion of running the farm stand, and then 3 to 4 staff members who are on site actually selling the produce, stocking it, setting it up, breaking it down. We're going to go through all of the equipment that you require to run a farm stand, the produce that we have available to us in the region. Typically, you need a storage room or space for the equipment, or we actually have a few vans that we're able to store equipment in. So depending on, you know, what your setup is and where it is, it's good to have that storage space nearby. And then we're going to dive in a little bit into the budget as well, just a sample budget of things that you should consider in terms of costs for running a farm stand.
Should we try Corey again?
Sure.
Oh, you sound good.
Oh, sounds better.
Oh, great. Okay.
I'll move.
So this is a sample of our budget, and this is what we came up with, sort of to give you a guideline of how much and what it takes to buy and purchase all of the equipment. So staffing, we left blank because it's really up to you what kind of a model of a farm stand you'll implement. We had some of our community partners who hired high school teenagers, who hired seniors, or who had maybe volunteers to operate a farm stand. So this is blank because this is really up to you and your model. And then the list just goes down and gives you some idea of what you'll need to purchase in order to run a farm stand. So you'll need an iPad and data package for processing cards and EBT. You'll need a printer for that, swiper, and PhotoPay application that we use to run EBT and SNAP and credit and debit. You'll need insurance, and then in terms of equipment, we typically use anywhere between 2 and 4 tents. 2 tents is really for a mid-size market, and then 7 folding tables, about 8 weights, 2 scales, 2 weight belts. Thank you. Tablecloths, A-frame for your outreach and better visibility, and of course the smaller things like chalk markers, egg cooler if you're going to be purchasing eggs, cash box, storage bins, bushel baskets, banners, price holders. And all of these links where we purchase these things are in the farm stand manual that will be sent if it hasn't already. Next slide, please. So staffing. So as I mentioned earlier, GrowNYC farm stand hires high school teens to work at the stand. We typically have a GrowNYC manager who oversees anywhere between 3 and 4 high school teens to work at the stand. We also have volunteers that help at some of our busier sites. And in terms of staffing, you'll really need to think of how you want to run your farm stand. Is it going to be only adults? Are you going to be hiring some of the youth that's going to work? And if you are, you also have to think about they're pretty much available during the summer, but then come fall, some of them go back to school. So these are all things that you need to take into consideration. Next slide, please. So in terms of equipment and supplies, as you can see on the picture, this is one of our bigger markets on Lower East Side. We use 3 tents, and you'll need 6 to 8 tables, 2 to 3 scales to help better help sort of like direct customers and help customers along the way. Baskets of different sizes, signage, bags, and roll bags for people to bag individual items. And then iPhone or iPad for processing credit and SNAP. In terms of office supplies, of course, you can think about, anything from, pencil and pens to tape to scissors to price and price holders, anything that's going to help run the business better. We use cash boxes that we purchase in Staples that hold our cash and different market currencies that we accept. Coolers for eggs, because we do purchase eggs and some of the dry goods like flour and maple syrup, honey, and oats. Broom and dustpan, as we said, we're operating on public sidewalks and we need to leave the space as clean as possible after we leave. Garbage bags, and if you have a community partner or if you're operating in front of your own building, that's great because you'll have a place where you can drop off garbage. But if you don't, you need to think about where you're going to be dropping it at the end of the day. So last year we suspended our cooking demos because of COVID, and we didn't do any sampling, which I'm hoping it's going to change at some point in the future. But if you are thinking, if that does change, and if you start thinking about cooking demos that really do help in promoting the produce that we are purchasing, then you'll need like portable stove, gas, and all of the cooking supplies for cooking on the spot. So all of our markets operate either on parks properties or New York City property. So you'll need to be applying for one of those permits, and those take a while. The markets that are operating on private property do not need any permitting. But if you are operating on the parks property or New York City property, you'll need to apply for either of those. And both of those links are again in the manual. You'll also need to present in front of the community board. They really need to approve the market in your neighborhood. And also you'll need the approval from the local precinct. Great, and now we'll talk about the farm stand setup. So there was a world before COVID where we used to set up in two different styles. So the first one, the picture on the top, is the horseshoe style, and then the reverse horseshoe style is the picture on the bottom that we sort of suspended as of last year, and we're not going to bring it back until who knows. But horseshoe style, both of these styles have advantages and disadvantages. The horseshoe style is really great for attracting customers. As you can see, the tables are sort of on the front line. You can see the produce lined up, and it really attracts the people to come to the stand. The downside of that style is that it eliminates open space. As you can see on the picture below, there's more open space. People can sort of roam around, shop on their own, and then sort of walk over to the register. The horseshoe style does not have that. It creates navigational anxiety. People sort of are bumping into each other. And your staff is responsible for more hand-holding the customers. So you're sort of helping one customer from the beginning until they check out. Whereas at the bottom, at the reverse horseshoe style, they're shopping on their own and they're bringing their produce to the checkout where your staff is checking it out. And then again, horseshoe style, you have, as I said, less staff available at the checkout. And oops, can you just go back 1 second? Thank you. And then the reverse horseshoe style really gives more staff available at the checkout, and it sort of reduces the congestion at the sidewalk. The drawbacks is your cash box is a little less secure, which is totally fixable. You can have more staff available to sort of keep an eye on the cash box. Next slide, please. And so during COVID, when COVID started last March, we, GrowNYC implemented COVID safety protocols, and we sort of run the markets according to very strict rules since then. As you can see on the far left picture, we chalk out all our standing lines. So people stand in line 6 feet apart. We have a main entrance and exit points. So you can't really enter where the cash register is. There's a one-way flow of foot traffic through the stand. People at the first table have, it's a sanitizing station. We offer people to sanitize their hands, and then as of mid-season last year, we allowed customers to touch and pick their own produce. We started the season with no touching allowed, and then we sort of switched mid-season to allow touching. Some customers still prefer us to bag the produce, but most customers can grab a basket, fill the basket with produce, and then walk towards the cash register to pay, with maintaining 6 feet distance under the tents. And then they sort of walk over to the cash register, which is the last picture on the right. And there is also clearly marked checkout point. Next slide, please. So after you set up the farm stand, the first thing you would set up is your tents. You would secure the tent with weight. You would put up the tables. We also sanitize the tables and tablecloths before and after we start the shift. Our produce arrives on a separate truck, so would your produce as well. We typically meet 1 to 1.5 hours earlier, so we have that time to set up the equipment before the produce truck arrives, and then we help to unload. We display the produce, and then after the produce is displayed, we also hang signage. So in terms of signage, we have some of the posters that display our farms, where they're located, what are they growing, what are their growing practices, and then in terms of promotion, obviously, depending on a week, you'll be promoting either a certain product that you want to move or something new that is coming in, like, strawberries in spring or whatever you want to promote for that week. Next slide, please. Again, you also want to set up your banner. Signage is really, really important. It's sort of the key, and it really helps promote the market. So having banners, having A-frames really help to draw customers. Writing a market and maybe what you're offering that day, and then putting it doesn't have to be really in front of the farm stand. We like to take it on like a further corner, or maybe a corner that has more foot traffic that sort of points to the farm stand. That also helps attract additional customers. And obviously, if you are coming to an end of the season, you want to display your last market day, or especially important signage for end of the season is the expiration of the market currencies like FMNP and Telfront. Next slide, please. And now we'll go into the farm stand display. So these 4 pictures are not from the farm stands, but from our Union Square Green Market. But it really shows the abundance of produce, and that's what attracts customers to your stand. You really And I'm going to talk about how much produce you should order. You don't want to order too little so your stand looks empty, but you also don't want to order too much because you also want to sell that produce by the end of the day, and you don't want to end up with a lot of leftovers. So you can see, for example, on the top right, it's our SNSO farmer who really brings a lot, but it's a great picture because it really attracts people. And then we also display produce according to type. So we put sort of like root vegetables close together. You also want to think about color. If you're ordering purple carrots and purple beets, you want to break those two with something else. We typically place fruits next to each other, and then greens and items that are loose, like potatoes and onions, are going to go together. Next slide, please. So these are our farm stand pictures. As you can see, you want to organize your produce by type, and you always want to make it look pretty, because that at the end really is what attracts customer to your stand. And I know I keep saying that, but it's really what your stand and how it looks is what is going to help you with sales. As you can see, these are some of varieties. We also, I mentioned, we also buy bread and different types of salsas and hot sauces. So we typically place those things together. Also, herbs are great to have at the register. We have a lavender guy at Union Square who sprinkles lavender on the sidewalks. So when people are walking, they sort of rub the lavender, and it sort of like helps spread the smell. So having herbs at the register is a trick that we have, and it's also bunched. So, you know, if they have to round up to a certain amount of dollars, you know, you can say, oh, there's a bunch of, you know, basil for $1. You can have that. Great. And next slide, please. I can talk about display all day long. All edibles must be off the ground. As you can see in the pictures, you can use pallets, staples, or tarps. We use broken boxes. So when we empty a box, we put something extra on the top of that. Next slide, please. Again, the eye attracts the color. Yellow is the color that is seen from afar. So having those sort of on the corner of the tables will attract people. We like to say pile it high and watch it fly. So the higher you put it, the more attractive it looks. And then sort of as your day goes along and you start selling out of things, you want to consolidate things and put it closer together so there's like no empty space in the tables. Again, signage is super helpful. If you're operating in a neighborhood that speaks other languages, having signs in other languages also is a huge help. Providing good flow, as I said, especially during COVID times. And active retailing is also super important. You want to have your staff really be engaged in what they're doing. You know, we work with young folks who sometimes, you know, bored, or they want to sit around and they want to be on their phone, and that really doesn't look too great from the customer point of view. So you always want to educate the youth on how to be a good salesperson. Next slide, please. Okay, so placing the order for your market. I know you were wondering, you know, how much should I order for my first day of the market? If you're, you know, especially if you're operating your farm stand for the first time, that first couple of weeks it's gonna take a while to build your foot traffic. You can't expect that you're gonna have high sales right away. Also, July is really a slow month for us as well. We're just returning. We do a lot of outreach in June to promote our markets coming back. and you just need to be patient and sort of build your customer base over more than a week. Forecasting in terms of farm stand is basically placing your order for the following week, and that's based on how well you did on your previous day. And really, it's not that black and white, because if it's raining, you're obviously going to have more leftovers, but you really need to consider, if you ordered 1 case of peaches and you sold out in the first hour, you want to consider ordering more for next week. So it's just basically, at the end of the day, sort of thinking about what sold well, what didn't sell well, what people are requesting. That's also important to take into consideration and offer if things they want is available. And that just means knowing your target population and what they like. And also, of course, you take into consideration the weather, the nearby events, even though, sometimes you think, oh, there's like a big parade or something nearby, and that's going to draw people to the farm stand. It's not always the case. Our experience is people who are going to the events are not going to go shopping. So you got to think about that. Also holidays, upcoming holidays, if you're operating during the holiday season, and then also taking into consideration seasonality and the availability of the product. Next slide, please. Any questions about anything so far? You can also feel free to drop it in the chat as well.
I think we'll go ahead and have Michelle come on and talk through some of the ordering details and things around wholesale. But yeah, as Corey said, please feel free to put questions in the chat, and we can also have a Q&A at the end.
So there are just 2 chats. I want to answer those before we move on. So Emma is asking, how many feet above the ground does the food need to be? So as I said, it can be as high as you want, but as I mentioned, we place the food on broken boxes, so it's not really that high. But if you have the opportunity of placing it higher, that's great. And then Jessica's asking, what is the minimum amount of time the group must put on the farm market over the summer? I don't know if I understand.
I think Jessica's question might be related to the FreshConnect funding. So I think FreshConnect has some requirements around, how much you have to operate the, how many hours or something that the site needs to be open. Tahira, do you want to address that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and also might have to do with the staffing at the farm market. Also with, I was under the impression that GrowNYC would provide some staffing assistance, either the manager on site and also funding for the interns, or the interns, finding the interns and funding for paying them themselves, the high school interns.
Well, so the only, our role in this really is to connect community groups to ag and markets and to other funding sources, but GrowNYC does not, unfortunately, have our own funding to support operations of other stands. We run our own stands, which we fundraise for. And so this training is to sort of just provide the expertise that we've developed over the years in running these kinds of sites, and then connecting you to Ag and Markets, which has the FreshConnect grant that you can apply for to provide the funding for your site. And then we also sent around, after the last training, some other funding ideas. Tahira, do you want to jump in here maybe?
Yeah, sure. And I'll have a more in-depth presentation following everything else that is shared. However, we do require for our grants a minimum of 12 weeks that the farm stand is in operation. So that could be 12 weeks of, 12 scheduled pickups, or it can also be picking up on a biweekly basis, which would be 6 scheduled pickups. And I'll go into it a little bit more following the other presentation.
All right, great. And that is still open, correct, for applications, or is that one closed? No, that's sorry. I recognize your name now. You're from the. Sorry. And then I just have one other question about, because our group, we are not in an area that New York City parks traditionally would allow to have a farmers market, because of we're not in a HUD district or next to a HUD district. And I was told by NYC Parks that our group ourselves would not be able to apply for a permit through NYC Parks for this, that we would have to have the farmers apply for a permit for a farm market. And is that right, or is there something else, because we are going to be working with NYC Grow on this?
Sorry, I was just trying to unmute myself. Maybe we can talk after the fact, Jessica, because I think what you're saying is that you're not part of the CDBG block grant area, but there's a lot of other options. You could go through SAPO and get a street activities permit, which would be, not necessarily next to a park, but there might be other areas in your community that might work. So if you can reach out after. More. Yeah, that sounds great.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Tahira, did you want to say anything about the FreshConnect funds and whether those are still available?
Oh yeah, so we are completely closed for this year. The funding went exponentially faster than we've ever seen this grant round, but we are looking to reopen hopefully November, December, as soon as our kind of federal funding and partnerships line up for the next round. So our current grant round, which will be operating from April 1 of 2021 to September 30th of 2021, is closed, with the hopes of reopening in November.
Great, thank you so much.
Thanks. All right, Michelle, you're up.
Hey, how are you? Can everyone hear me? Perfect. Hi, everyone. Hi, Jessica. It's good to see you virtually on the Zoom call. And Cheryl, I'll connect you with Jessica. I have her information and I can forward that email, what she sent her earlier, so you can talk offline. But thank you so much for the introduction, Cheryl, and we'll go right into the slide. Okay, everyone. My name is Michelle Hernandez, and I work for GrowNYC Wholesale. If you haven't received the emails and prior to the info session, we have covered a few slides of who we are and what we cover, what GrowNYC does. GrowNYC creates an opportunity for local farmers in the wholesale market space while increasing access to the high quality produce and community seeking increased access to fresh, healthy food. So that's who we are in terms of what we do with working with our partners. We see our farmers as partners, not as clients or customers, but they are definitely our partners with that partnerships. So I'm just going to breeze through a few slides, but just to give you a point of cross of, GrowNYC is a food hub and a wholesale distributor. We're part of the nonprofit organization within GrowNYC that also runs the farm stand, fresh food box, and green markets. We, like I said before, we see our farmers we see our farmers and customers as partners. We deliver the same quality to all of our partners at an affordable wholesale price year round. We make local and seasonal seasonal products simple. So that's what GrowNYC entails. So Cheryl, I'm on slide 25. Sorry, I'm breezing right through. So I just wanted to be mindful with the time and to have everyone to have a questions at the end. So I'm at slide 25. So our produce comes out 3 times a week, Sundays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. No, sorry, Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. So in our product list, we're very transparent of where our where our products is coming from. In that product list, you'll see like the name of the farmer, how far it traveled, and where in New York or in the region is coming from. So as we say, we're very transparent of where our food comes from. We have a great relationship with our farmers. And because of that relationship, our customers who we see as them as partners, appreciate the transparency and the traceability that GrowNYC wholesale provides. Next slide. Once they come to our warehouse in the Bronx, we then redistribute it to our partners who order from us. Right now, we're currently procuring out of region, but we're also procuring items that's coming from the state of New York. Right now, we're still in spring, so we're still not getting the early items like we want to. So therefore, we rely on our out of region partners in the Southeast region to provide the yummy greens and nightshade products like peppers and tomatoes and zucchinis and so forth. So those are the things that we'd love to see in our product list to make it much brighter during this time. Next slide. Who do we distribute to that GrowNYC distributes to? So as I mentioned in the info session prior to this presentation, we're distributing our products to our nonprofit partners, institutions. Before COVID, we were delivering to senior centers, charter schools, and a few health clinics under the nonprofit sector, and retail space. Retail space, more or less like the farm stands, and like the co-op markets and so forth. So that we consider retail, and some supermarkets. You know, if we're lucky, where we can tap into the supermarkets. But really, what we do really well, who we distribute to, are mostly our nonprofit and food access program, like farm stands and fresh food box. Next slide. So how do we set up our wholesale account? So you're talking to me. I would be the point person who would be setting up your wholesale account. There is a process to set up our account. So we're going to walk you through the slides. Next slide, Cheryl. So in this slide, you'll see like the step-to-step of how the process is. We start with a new customer application, routing inquiry, our weekly product list, confirmation, confirming logistics, our onboarding account, and submitting your first order and delivery date. So all of these are line by line and step by step on how the onboarding process works with GrowNYC wholesale. Next slide. So in this slide, as we start with our new customer application, you contact me or we have a conversation. After following up everyone who's interested in doing the farm stand, I will send you an online Adobe Sign application, which is a PDF file sent from that's set up under Olivia Blanchflower. So it would go directly to your inbox, so that people would say, well, I don't see it. I don't see the application. It's if you don't see it, just always check in your spam mail first before looking into your inbox. So when you click into the link, you will review and sign. Next slide. Routing inquiry. So in this application, when you open it up, you will fill out the necessary paperwork that goes to the application. I have to stress this enough. When you fill out the application, we really need to start with your routing logistics options, which is under the receiving and time limitation in that application. It would be best to provide your first choice and second choice of delivery. Please keep in mind that this will give us the option to provide you what we can deliver to your facility or to your site. So that would help us to go back and forth. So if you just provide your first choice, second choice from the very beginning in the application, that will make my onboarding process much seamless. We also want to stress that we only deliver Monday through Fridays. We do not deliver Saturdays or Sundays. Saturdays, we only reserve those delivery time slots for GrowNYC internal programming only. So please keep in mind when you're deciding to do your farm stand concept, to really understand that we only have deliveries going from Monday through Friday. If your market is open on a Saturday, if there's a possibility to accept your order on a Friday, that would be an option. that we can at least do our best to provide, but if not, then we can also do pickups at different sites, depending on the situation and depending on where the route is going. But again, I just want to stress that out before you starting your concept of your farm stand, to really think about what day of the delivery that you want to set and what time do you want to accept the delivery. Next slide.
Yeah, so if I can just interrupt really quickly, just so folks understand, during our peak season, which is July through November, our wholesale warehouse has between 150 and 180 stops a week. So just to give you an idea of why it's important to have that first, second, and even third choice. So we can sort of place you in that time frame of delivery.
Yeah. Thank you, Corey, for to clarifying that. Yes, that is true. The peak season definitely does when things starts wrapping up, and that's when things starts to change. So routing, please keep in mind, is so imperative to provide, like Corey said, 3 choices. Our weekly product list. Once the conversation has started of your application process, I will then also add your email address so you can receive our product list. As I mentioned in the previous slide, our product list comes out 3 times a week: Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. Sometimes people, sometimes people say like, well, it looks kind of very similar, or why am I getting 3 product lists in the same week? Keep in mind that each of our farmers that we work with have different schedules, different production schedule when it comes to harvesting. So not all the product lists that you see will be the same. It will be slightly different depending on what the farmer is providing us. And the product list will eventually, it's coming from Constant Contact. So in most of the chances, it'll probably land on your spam mail rather than your inbox. So just check in the spam mail just in case it hasn't landed in your inbox. And for folks who are working in the institution sector where they have a high level of firewall, unfortunately, we can't break into your inbox. So if there's like an additional email address that you want to send us, and just in case you haven't received our product list, please let me know so I can add that email address as well so you can receive it so you don't miss our product list. Yeah. Next slide. So like I mentioned before, people would say, well, when does your product list comes out? Or when do I need to turn in when do I need to turn in my order? Or what time do I need to turn in my order? Or can I switch my delivery date? So these are very frequently asked questions that customers ask before onboarding them to become a customer. Once we solidify your routing confirmation, that means once we confirm your routing day, your routing time slot, I will then create an onboarding form that will detail your account name, your routing information, when does the product list come out that you're going to use, and when to submit your order. All of our orders of the 3 days that I mentioned that comes out, all of our orders are due before 3 p.m. So it's very imperative to really keep in mind that we cannot turn in your order after 3 p.m. Once it's after 3 p.m., we really have to make sure that our farmers have our orders. It's, we want to be very cognizant about their time when they're working in the production in the fields. So the last thing that they want to do is to spend extra hours in the office while they were all day sitting and all day working in the fields. They just want to get their order, get their in and out, So that's why it's always to say, like, if you want the order, send it before 3 p.m. or maybe a day before, depending on your order deadline or depending on your order date. Switching delivery days. So that could be a little tricky. During the off-peak season, we can make an exception because there's really not much delivery routes that we have during the off season. Peak season is a little tricky. Peak season for us is from July to November, as Corey mentioned. That could be a little tricky because there's a lot of deliveries and a lot of customers are coming back doing their programming. So it may change depending on what the route has scheduled. But again, if you could just keep that one delivery day that has allocated in our account, in your account, that would be much appreciated. If you cannot keep it, or you're just like, Michelle, I really need this day, then we'll try to work something out, but it's not always going to be 100% guaranteed, but we'll make the effort and do our best to meet your needs for delivery routes. Next slide, please, Cheryl. So confirming logistics, as I said in the previous slide, we start with your new application, your logistics, confirming logistics, meaning reconfirming like, this is your days. Please select your options if you have the options for your routings. The lead time to get the confirmation routing is about 1 to 2 weeks. I know it's a long time, but if you know that you're planning ahead, it's very important to keep in mind that when even though you're still planning your farm stand concept and you haven't got your paperworks and checks with the parks and, or whatever hoops that you need to go through, I personally suggest that you would set up your wholesale account first. So that way you're not waiting till the last minute. Again, because of the turnaround confirmation for logistic is about 1 to 2 weeks, you want to kind of like be ahead of the game of that. So once you set up your account, that's one less thing to worry about, so that way you're like ready, like, okay, I got my permits, I got this, I got that. Now I could just place my first order. Oh, I already sent my account has already been set up like 2 months ago. So you're good in the bag. So that's basically what I'm saying, is to make sure to set up your account as once as you start, creating this concept. So that way that's one less thing to worry about. Right now, we're currently not delivering South Brooklyn, i.e. meaning Coney Island, Bensonhurst. It's a little tricky because we don't have enough fleets to go down during the off season. But in the peak season, we do make deliveries out in the Far Rockaways, but that's only seasonal. Again, from July to November. So just keep that in mind, that we're not all everywhere, but we do our best to meet customers' needs. And also for the areas that we're not delivering, we do welcome pickups from our warehouse, and that too is optional as well. And that's request upon, and that's like, you can request that ahead of time if that's another option that you want to think of. Again, no Staten Island, Yonkers, Long Island, or New Jersey at the moment. Sorry. Next slide. So once you've been confirmed, once your logistic has been confirmed, once you have, the application has been solidified, now the next step would be the onboarding account. This is like the finish line of like finally getting your account ready with GrowNYC Wholesale. Your account will include your account name, your routing details, your order deadline. Sorry, the day that you're going to, which product list you're going to use, where to send your order, your payment option, and subs, swaps, and cancel. I can't even say the word, cancellation policy. Sorry, I do apologize. It's very important for customers to really read this document to make sure that you fully understand our protocols in terms of like your account names, where to send your order, and our cancel, swap, and sub policy. Like I said, once we submit the orders to our farmers, we cannot cancel that order. So if you know that it's going to rain, we're still going to be delivering to your site. So just keep that in mind, that farmers are counting on us to submit the order so they can get paid for their produce to come to give it to our customers. So just keep that in mind, that we're very, we want to be very mindful about cancellation. Again, if there's like an emergency, like school, like, I know before COVID, they would always have like the snowstorm or some kind of emergency. We do make an exception for things like that, but again, only like in circumstances like that. And again, more details will be in the cancellation policy. Next slide, please. Where to submit your order. So the onboarding account will tell you where to send it, but this is what it looks like. We don't have a fancy software as of yet where to type in or to submit it. Plain old email will do best. And, you just put our email address and in the subject line, just include the account name and the delivery day and the date of the order. And in the body of the email, you just have to type in what items you want. This is an example of what that looks like. Very simple, nothing fancy. Our order minimum is $250. So please keep that in mind, that includes the delivery, that also covers our gas, and that also covers our toll. So that is the order minimum that we are asking for customers to understand, that if it's under that minimum, we cannot deliver. Again, for folks who cannot meet the order minimum, we welcome pickups to our warehouse located in the Bronx. So that's also another option too as well. Also, I wanted to stress this out as well. Two things I want to stress. Once you submit your order, that does not include supplies like what Corey was talking in the presentation, like produce bags or shopping bags. We are literally do not supply items for that. And I'm pretty sure that in the manual that Corey will give, will outline where to find vendors to source. But again, we only supply products like produce, grains, and and things to that nature, but we do not supply anything that's not that. And also in the presentation, I noticed that you pointed out bread and honey. So we do sell honey for internal and external customers. Unfortunately, breads, we do not offer that for external partners. That's only for GrowNYC internal programming only. So sorry. Next slide. When you're scheduling delivery, you would need to know, we would need to know in the application process, the name and the cell phone, or who's the person who's going to be designated to receive the product. If there's any like instructions, like, I always say like the red door next to the store, or the park that has a pole that is red or something, anything that would help the driver to know where that site is, especially when it's a new site. And also keep in mind too, our drivers are never the same. It's always different every week, depending on the route. So one driver may, come to your site and it'll be a different driver who have a different, trying their best to get to the site. So just the more detail that you can be in the application, the better for me. So I can transcribe that to operations to let them know that delivery can be seamless without no headaches. And also, and to speak to, in regards to your order, if it's running late, there's a number where you can call us and leave a message. If we can, if we can't pick up, just please leave a message with your name and phone number and your account name. That would be very helpful for us, so that way either myself or someone at the warehouse can check the voicemail and they can Slack that over to us to look into it. So that would be very helpful to, leave a message, leave your phone number and your account name. And that's it. Hopefully the slides were very helpful, and can't wait to hear your questions at the end of the presentation.
Great. So we are definitely running a little over. It's about 5 o'clock right now. So we just wanted to, call everyone's attention to that. Feel free to hop off if you have other things that you need to do. But the next section is really important. We're going to talk about record keeping, but we will share this presentation with everyone, tomorrow or the next day. So just wanted to give that opportunity. Take it away, Corey.
Yeah, thank you. So record keeping, fun stuff, paperwork. We have a couple of forms that we use. We actually also use a much more detailed accounting for our own purposes. But for many, many years, we use these forms that work really well. This is our reconciliation form that sort of has the list of all different market currencies, sales and expenses in one place. So I'm not going to go into too much details because this is very well explained in the manual, but I will go through it. So on the top, of course, you'll write your farm stand name, the manager name who's running the farm stand, the date, obviously. And then after your end of the day, when you're doing your closing inventory at the market, and actually closing inventory is our second form, but we always have starting cash. Starting cash is something that we put aside. Typically it's $200. And we don't count that towards our day's sales. So cash is your total sales minus the 200. You'll do SNAP, EBT, credit, debit, FMMP when it's peak season, Health Box, Green Market Box, any other currencies that you have, you'll count and you'll put in the numbers in the loss column. Your total sales is obviously all of those added together. Your cost of goods is basically your invoice that you purchased for that day. And then you also have, if you have some petty cash, we typically use the cash from the box if we need to purchase like paper towels or gloves or anything small like that. And then your total expenses is obviously those two added together. Your total net will be your sales minus your expenses. And then closing inventory is basically what you're counting at the end of the day, and those are your leftovers. For our own purposes, we were also counting the pounds of produce that we sold for that day. And then also for our donation purposes, we counted the pounds of produce that we donate to the organization that we work in the neighborhood, either a church or Soup Kitchen or whoever is our partner. And then we also count customers. This is fairly easy. We have a clicker at the register, and for every transaction, we basically count transactions. So that gives you a pretty good number of how many customers you serve for that day. And then the notes section is, whatever important you think there was for that day, like it was crazy hot or super cold or some kind of an event nearby that, you ended up with a lot of leftovers. If you had any volunteers or any notes, you can put that in a note section. Next slide, please. Our closing inventory is also pretty straightforward. We have a couple of columns. So you basically write down only things that you have left at the end of the day. So if you had peaches and you sold out, you're obviously not going to put it on the list. So in the first column, you'll write an item of product. In the second column, you'll write the quantity purchased. So for example, if you purchase 2 cases of carrots, each case has 12 bunches, you'll write 24. Closing quantity also, it counts, and so for bunches, obviously you're going to sell it by bunch. Anything that are loose, you're going to sell by pound. But for our own donation purposes, we need to weigh the bunched as well. That's why we have both of those on there. If you're not going to focus on donation, then you don't have to use it. Retail price is basically what you're selling your produce for. So if you're selling your carrots for $3 a bunch, you're going to write $3 in that fifth column. And then your retail value is basically the retail price multiplied by your closing inventory. So if you had 5 bunches sold for $3, you'll write 15 in the loss column. And you'll go through the list, and you basically do this after you close down the farm stand. Let's say you're closing it at 2 and you stop selling. At that point, you're going to go through the closing inventory. Next slide, please. This is a sample of an invoice that you would receive at your site from the driver. Each invoice has your site name, the contact person, as Michelle mentioned, and then obviously you'll get 2 copies of invoice. We like to check off, as you can see, this is a copy of one of ours that has check off marks that you received everything, and then we sign the other one and we give that to the driver so he has that for his record. Under the quantity column, you can see how many cases of each item you're supposed to receive. It's really, really important that you check off the items that you receive while the driver is still there. That way, sometimes they're last minute, like morning add-ons like tomatoes, because they need different temperature. They are added in the morning, and sometimes they are placed separately from the rest of the pallet. It's easy, you know, if you say I didn't get my tomatoes, you say to the driver, can you check your truck, see if the tomatoes are still on there. So it's really, really important that you check your invoice when you get the product list. Okay, how to calculate your prices. GrowNYC farm stand basically works on 60 to 100% markup. It's really easy to calculate prices. You take the amount that you paid for and you divide it by pounds for those things that you sell by pound. So if you have potatoes that are $20 a box, and there's 25 pounds, you get 80 cents per pound, which is what you're paying for. And at 100% markup, you would double the price and sell that at 100% markup. And same goes for the bunches as well. Next slide, please. Any questions about all of that record keeping and paperwork? I know it's we sort of rushed through it. It's super detailed, explained in the manual. We're happy to answer questions after you read the manual as well. But if you do have questions, feel free to unmute or drop it in a chat.
Yeah,
Okay.
one thing I would add to there is just that obviously these handouts, the inventory sheet and the reconciliation sheet, they're really meant to be printed out so that you have something in your hand and you can, you know, handwrite it when you're on the ground at the farm stand. It's obviously also super easy to do this in an Excel spreadsheet, depending on your comfort with that. So if you are interested in doing it in a spreadsheet and you want a template for that, please let us know. We're happy to share the spreadsheets that we're using for tracking all of this stuff as well.
Great. I don't see any questions in the chat. Is that our very last slide? Oh, then we have currencies. Oh my goodness.
It's really fast.
Section.
I can go through that very quickly.
Okay. I feel bad. We're stretching our participants' time.
It's primarily just this page, and this sheet also is in this links page that I've put in the chat a few times. Basically, these are the additional currencies besides cash and besides SNAP or credit that you might be accepting at your farm stand. The one thing I really want to stress is that the only way for you to be redeemed or to use this money or to be redeemed for these currencies is to pay GrowNYC Wholesale with these currencies, to use this to pay off your invoice. GrowNYC Wholesale is considered a farm under Ag and Markets and under the Department of Health. And so we're able to get reimbursed for these coupons, but we need to be the entity sending them in. So we need you to send us these coupons as payment for your invoice. This sheet has explanations on how to do that. When you're paying your invoice, you can itemize all of the currencies that you're turning in as part of this redemption process. But yeah, it should be clearly outlined on this piece of paper and the PDF that's in the links.
Yes, I just wanted to add in, Jessica. Yes, that's one of the unique things that GrowNYC Wholesale can take these currencies. It's also best to attach it with your invoices as well. I mean, the information is going to be on this sheet. It's a double sheet so that Jessica will send out. But yes, we do take it. We happily take these special currencies. Thanks.
And then that note in red obviously is pretty important, which is why we put it in red. So we actually need you to use these currencies to pay your invoice prior to the expiration date, not the redemption date. And the reason for that is GrowNYC then needs to submit these to the Farmers Market Federation to actually get redeemed for the value of it. So follow the expiration date on any of these checks for when they need to be submitted by to us.
Great.
So fast.
So fast,
yeah,
and really good information.
Yeah.
Oh. Go ahead, Corey.
Yeah, I wanted to stress that we didn't have time to go into great details, but again, I want to point out that manual that has a lot of additional information. So it's super important that you go through it and read it, and you'll find out other things it takes to run farm stand as well. So just a quick guidelines for COVID safety for your staff and your shoppers. Again, as I mentioned, we implemented these rules very early on, and we're sticking to them. Marking waiting lines on the sidewalk is really important. Having clear signage about your sanitizing station, about your entrance and exit points. Are you going to be allowing customers to pick their own produce? If so, have plenty of baskets available. If you're not, have that clearly stated as well, and then make sure your customers are able to maintain 6 feet of distance. And then COVID line management, reminding customers where they're actively, into parties of more than 2. If they are, we ask them to sort of that and at least shopping. As bikers, they're not allowed in that small space under the tent.
I don't know if others are having a hard time hearing. Corey, Michelle, are you? I see your face, but yeah, yeah. So basically, we've been asking customers to limit their visits to the market just so they're not coming with a whole group of people, so that we can actively enforce social distancing. And then again, asking for customers to lock their bikes outside of the stand so that we can reduce the crowding, because we're kind of asking people to line up, and it just, there's already more of a line than there used to be because of our new protocols. So that's what those last 2 points I think that Corey was making were. We also have some great information on our website in the manual, and also, of course, you can check the CDC for COVID guidelines. But I think if you look on in the manual, you'll find a lot of really great tips on how to make sure that you're keeping your staff and your customers safe. So this is Corey and Michelle's information on the page now on the screen. Feel free to reach out to any of us with questions or, advice or, tips on how to get going. I want to make sure that we leave some time for Tahira to talk as well. So I will pass it on, and I'm going to stop sharing now.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all so much. This session was really helpful and informative. I just want to share a little bit about our FreshConnect food box grant program that we have running in New York State. As I mentioned earlier, unfortunately, this round of funding is completely closed. We are looking to open up again in November, December, end of this year, around that time. So our FreshConnect grant program offers $10,000 for nonprofit organizations. You have to be a nonprofit. If you're not a nonprofit, you have to be operating under a fiscal sponsor. So in order to contract with the state, that is just one of our requirements. You must be running some form of a SNAP eligible food box, which GrowNYC will be giving that presentation later on this week. A farm stand, a CSA, something along that nature that is providing local produce to communities within New York State. And so the communities that we are really looking to prioritize within this program are those who are, SNAP eligible communities, folks who are kind of under-resourced and most marginalized. So kind of overall, to think about and understand the program, we need you to be running some type of local food enterprise, one of the ones that I just listed, be serving a priority population, folks who are SNAP eligible in communities that typically don't have access to fresh food, and to be providing nutrition education. And so one of the awesome parts of being in the space with GrowNYC and looking to source from GrowNYC is you would automatically kind of qualify for this grant because they do prioritize sourcing locally, and that is also one of the requirements for this grant. And so a lot of what was shared earlier around how to set up your farm stand, right? All of that equipment in terms of tables, tents, tarp, covering staff time, this grant is able to cover. And so that is one of the unique and also what makes this grant kind of most requested because we cover operational costs and staff capacity, which a lot of grants do not. So if you are looking to, I believe someone mentioned earlier, like employ some student volunteers or interns, if you're looking to employ folks who have always traditionally kind of worked for free just for the betterment of the community, now you have the opportunity to pay them with some of this $10,000 funding. We require that the farm stand, as I mentioned earlier, operate for a minimum of 12 weeks, and that could be 12 weeks, meaning 12 scheduled pickups, or could mean 6 scheduled pickups on a bi-weekly basis. And so the application process is pretty simple, and we have worked with GrowNYC and other organizations to do kind of some outreach across New York City and across New York State. And so what you'll include in your application is just a simple kind of background in terms of who you are, what community that you are serving, and then what is the form or type of project that you are trying to operate and run, as well as those kind of 3 criteria, right? How are you serving SNAP eligible communities? Where are you sourcing your produce from? And in this case, it would be GrowNYC through that partnership. And then, what are you planning to do for nutrition education? And a lot of what was shared earlier folds really well into what we require. So I know that there was some mention of folks really doing cooking demonstrations and things of that nature, however, not being able to do them due to COVID. So some ways that we saw folks get around them is attaching recipes to some of the produce that's being sold at certain stands and sites. We've seen folks do virtual cooking demonstrations and things of that nature. And so just so I don't forget, some of the eligible costs that this grant can cover, like I said, staff salaries, stipends, administrative costs, rent for your site location. So say you partnered with a church or something of that nature and you want to provide them with some form of an honorarium, you can do that. Any of your nutrition education materials, any of the marketing and promotional costs necessary. So when you're doing some outreach beforehand, you pay your staff for that in your flyers or, communication services that you are using to communicate with folks and get in contact can also be covered from this grant. What we cannot cover is any of the hardware required for setting up SNAP and EBT. We cannot cover any of the costs of food. So that would really be your customers, utilizing their own, cash or other forms of currency, as GrowNYC shared, to cover the cost of food. Any indirect costs we cannot cover, any costs associated with preparing an application we can't cover, and any costs occurred prior to the awarding or of the grant and you getting into contract with us. And so I'm just going to leave it at that. I know that there was a lot of information. I do have a link that where I give my full in-depth presentation around the FreshConnect program that will also discuss the different models that we accept, all of which GrowNYC has been doing some outreach and sharing information around, as well as more in-depth information around our reporting, contracting, and all other requirements of the grant. But just wanted to give the opportunity to share what we can cover. So thank you all for your time.
Thank you so much, Tahira. We really appreciate your providing that context and support for our partners here. So we have gone over time. We really appreciate those of you that have been able to stick with us tonight. And, again, we are all here for you, and feel free to reach out to any of us for, with any questions or anything following this presentation. I'm going to keep it open just for another minute. If anybody has questions, feel free to unmute. And we will be sending around the recording as well as more resources over email. Go ahead, Michelle.
Yeah, no, thank you, Cheryl. I was going to say, once the recording, in the email, I did say the recording will be available once it's reviewed and approved. So I'll send out an email with the recording as well, and following up with folks who are interested in following up for this program. And that way we can start the application process. But that's it.
All right. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful evening. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you all. Bye.